On December 2nd, 2022, the first set for the One Piece card game will be releasing, and with it comes a slew of new cards to build decks with. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with y'all all of my first draft deck lists for this brand new game in this brand new format. Hopefully the lists I give you guys will give you a good jumping off point so you can start building your own decks for this game. This is something I do on my channel a lot, but it's my first time doing it for One Piece, so hopefully all the information I give you will make you better One Piece players, and we can have a fun chat about all these cool new cards we get to use in this game. And the first deck I have for y'all is the king of mono red aggro, Zoro. This young man with his triple sword style and continuous Don X1 effect to give all of your characters plus 1000 power is literally the poster child for aggression in One Piece. We thought decks like starter deck Luffy, who had access to a really powerful slew of rush attackers, was going to be how aggro works in this game. No. Playing a bunch of cheap costed bodies like Sai or Vivi and then giving them an inherent plus 1000 power during your turn is how you create an aggressive board in this game. And that's how we've built our deck. Instead of having really powerful 7, 8, 9 drops that come into play and take over the game, we have a bunch of little drops in here that will play throughout the game, and the more we have, the more value we're gonna get out of Zoro's continuous leader ability. I mean, it's basic math. If we have 5 characters in play that all get a plus 1000 power boost, and they all attack our opponent's leader, that's now 5 more cards our opponent needs to expend from their hand if they wanna actually stop those attacks. But this deck isn't all gas, no brakes. There's actually an engine in here that can let us not only create resources, but also kind of mess with our opponent's board a little bit. The 2 biggest cards for this deck's advantage engine are, of course, the 1-drop Nami, probably the best card in red, period, lets you 1-drop, look at the top 5, add a Straw Hat Crew, and the brand new Uta that comes out as well. Uta is a really cool card that lets you recycle other 3 cost or less red cards from your deck other than Uta. That's pretty much our entire top row right here, as well as the brand new SR Zoro, who is a rush attacker. Alongside Zoro, we also have 3 copies of the SR Monkey D. Luffy from the starter deck, who can don X2 when attacking. Your opponent cannot activate blocker for this battle. This can be a really cool way to sort of guarantee game or make it to where our opponent has to always stay at 1 life or more against us. Not only is this deck really aggressive at constantly just spewing out characters that can create damaging attacks against your opponent, it also has like a pseudo control package built into it thanks to some of the removal cards in red. The main ones I'm talking about are these 4 copies of Jet Pistol, as well as these 4 copies of the brand new Nico Robin. This card says Don X1 when attacking, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 3000 power or less. If you combine this ability with some of the power reduction abilities like the 4-drop Brook or the brand new 1-drop Otama, you can actually KO things that have more power and can actually really stymie your opponent's board while also dealing damage to them in the process. The best situation to use these combination of effects is against the 8-drop Kid, which probably will be the defining card of this format, at least in the early stages of the English metagame. This card can divert every single attack you do to it, and with its 8000 stat line, it can be kind of hard to get over. But if you, for 1 cost, play Otama, reduce it by 2000, and then play a 4 cost of Jet Pistol, KOing the now 6000 power Kid, that becomes a little bit easier. Overall, I love the simplicity of this deck. You play dudes, make them strong, and you swing, but I think it has a lot of room going forward to become a lot better. There are some cards you can play, like the 1-drop Karu or the 2-drop Rush Sanji, that I'm currently not playing, that you can definitely experiment with. But all the non-negotiable cards are definitely things like Jet Pistol, the 1-drops, the Uta, and of course the SR Zoro. This card is just so strong, and this alternate art is gorgeous! The next deck I have for you, though, is definitely the boogeyman of the format, Eustace Captain Kid. During these super pre-release times for One Piece, it was well regarded that Kid was the best leader, full stop, and that does not change in set 1. In fact, it becomes even more true. While yes, we have leaders, which we'll see later, like Dofi, Law, Zoro, these are all very consistent, very powerful leaders, Kid just runs the show. I mean, having an uninteractable multi-attacker every single turn is just the definition of pressure, and when you combine it with some of the most individually valuable cards in One Piece, you get a crazy strong deck. Because green has so many good cards, there are so many ways to build this deck, but this is the version that I've come up with for at least the early stages of this game. Similar to the early deck limited battle versions of Kid, we rely on Jewelry Bonnie to create advantage in the early game and dig for our more powerful late game cards like 7-drop Kid and 5-drop Basil Hawkins. But now we have the inclusion of the brand new 8-drop Kid, which I alluded to earlier as being the game warping defining card of this format. Similar to the 7-drop Kid, he has a Don X1 ability during your opponent's turn. As long as this character is rested, your opponent cannot attack anything other than characters named Eustace Captain Kid. So if this guy has a Don underneath him and is rested, you can only attack him or other kids that are in play besides the leader. And on top of that, he has an activate main once per turn. You may rest this character to play one character with a cost of 3 or less from your hand. So normally you wouldn't think it's that bad to have a rest, condition for your effect. But even though you can't attack the turn you're played as a character, you can rest yourself to pay for the cost of abilities. So as soon as you play this card, you can rest it and then play a free card from your hand, essentially getting 11 Don worth of value for just 8 Don. And if you have one active remaining, you can tuck it underneath and now have an essential 8,000 tank for all of your opponent's attacks on the following turn. And if that wasn't bad enough, the card you're usually playing off of Kid's second effect is this one, Okiku. I mentioned that Kid is like the game warping card. Like every decision we make as non-green Kid decks are centered around how we deal with 8-drop Kid. Okiku is probably the most powerful individual card in the game. Like, if you remove all other synergies, effects, whatever, Okiku is the strongest card. 3-drop, 5,000 power, no counter, Don X1, when attacking once per turn, rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. I have not done the math, but I'm pretty sure over 80% of all characters in this game are less than 5 cost. And the fact that Okiku can just rest them whenever she wants is crazy. This gives Kid one of the most powerful mid-range control tools to date. And when you combine that with the powerful defensive tool of 8-drop Kid with the guaranteed aggression from the leader, you can see how all of these powerful cards start working together. So yeah, green is definitely a deck to watch out for. You have the strong base of powerful cards like Jewelry Bonnie and Momonosuke to gain advantage and dig for your other pieces. And then you have really powerful mid-game and control tools in the form of Okiko, Cat Viper, and Izo, which in combination with your powerful attackers like Basil Hawkins or 7-drop Kid can just clear your opponent's board. And because you have guaranteed aggression in the form of your leader, you can just inevitably win the game. This is my current green Kid deck. If you yourself do not plan on playing it, definitely plan on playing against it. And at this point, you've been watching the video for a while now, and I want to ask, hey, did you know that 60% of the people that watch these videos aren't actually subscribed? If that's you, go ahead and double check, because if you're enjoying the videos and you're seeing them over and over again, subscribing is a really easy and free way to make sure you don't miss out on any more. Also, let me know down below in the comments what deck you are personally playing in One Piece at the beginning of the format that you're going to try to tweak, evolve, and get better at as the format evolves. All right, with that said, back to me as we talk about really cool decks in a really cool new game. Up next, we have the weirdest deck that I think I have for you guys in my blue Donquixote Doflamingo deck. While I am of the opinion that the control style of Crocodile might be better served in the set 1 meta, I'm testing a lot of Doflamingo because I just love this leader ability. Don X2, when attacking, rest a Don, reveal one card from the top of your deck. If that card is the 7 Warlords of the Sea type character with a cost of 4 or less, you may play the card as rested. So you put 2 underneath, you attack, you pay 1 more from your active Don pool, you look at the top card, if it's a 7 Warlords, you play it at rest. really cool. Now you're probably sitting there saying, hey Steven, this effect sounds cool, but it also sounds very luck-based, very high-rolly, if you will. How do you plan to account for just wasting 3 Dawn and summoning nothing from the top of your deck? Well, thanks to powerful cards like the 1-drop Perona as well as the 3-drop Donquixote blocker, there are actually ways in this deck to manipulate the top few cards so you can know for sure whether or not you're getting a 7 Warlords when you use Donquixote's leader effect. Oftentimes, your ideal mulligan will include one of these 2 cards, so in the first couple of turns, you can manipulate when you're going to actually choose to attack with your Donquixote leader. So we've got the engine down, how we're going to be summoning 7 Warlords. Which ones can we summon? In my opinion, the best ones go as follows: Boa Hancock, Bartholomew Kuma, and Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria, we saw from the starter deck, can let you recuperate cards from your trash that are 7 Warlords, free advantage gaining while you're already gaining advantage. We have the brand new Kuma, who has a really cool on KO ability to let you summon Pacifistas from your hand. So if your opponent is trying to counter you summoning a bunch of dudes by attacking the dudes you summon because they do come into play rest, you can mitigate that by, if this dies, summoning a Pacifista that you had in your hand, so you still get that free body that can attack on the following turn. And then finally, we have the individual best one, no question, in the SR Boa Hancock. She's a blocker with Dawn X1 when attacking, or on block, draw 1 card if there are 5 or less cards in your hand. I am actually salivating at the idea that a card I played from my deck will now draw me more cards throughout a game. It's just mwah in terms of card advantage. Now, that's kind of our early, mid, and sometimes late game plan. What about our top end? Well, we have some really cool cards and some concessions that we're making to the format. When I say concession, I mean the inclusion of the 5-drop 7k vanilla in Virgo. The only real reason this card is in the deck is to be a really powerful character that we can use to threaten 8-drop Kid. Because even though blue is known as the control color, it doesn't have any way to reliably remove 8-drop Kid other than just swinging into it. So having naturally powerfully statted cards to help you get rid of it while expunging the least amount of resources seems really good. From there, we have the really powerful top end cards that you'll almost always see in every single blue deck: 3 copies of the starter deck Donquixote and 3 copies of the brand new 9-drop Dracule Mihawk. This card is a 9,000 power beast with the on-play effect to place 1 character with a cost of 7 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. Super amazing way to control the board. Attached to a 9,000 body, can create a ton of advantage and pressure in the late game. Definitely one of the best cards, period, in blue, and one that I'm super glad we now have thanks to set 1 Romance Dawn. And from there, we have the standard, 2,000 counters in Dracula Mihawk Alvida. We got some blockers in Law, Donquixote, as well as 4 copies of Love Love Beam, the best event card in blue, period. Some other cards you can consider playing in here that are kind of on theme are the brand new 2-drop event card Overheat, as well as the other 4-drop 5k Gecko Moria, who can gain double attack. So yeah, that's it for my current Doflamingo deck. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, and give it a try for yourself. Rounding off our monocolor decks for this video, we have my current purple Kaido deck in One Piece. This is going to be really hard for me to do because I was a huge fan of purple in the deck limited battles format. But as of OPO1, I am not a huge fan of this color. While yes, we got super awesome inclusions in 10-drop Kaido, who is a literal board wipe, as well as 7-drop King, who gives us access to KOing multiple characters for playing a single character, this deck just feels like the same deck limited battle Kaido deck with the inclusion of some more 2k counters like X-Drake or even Orochi. And while yes, that helps you bolster the defense of this deck and in theory give you more longevity to reach your powerful late game plays, I just think it's lacking something to really give it that oomph to compete against decks like Zoro or even Green Kid. Oh, and if you are someone who's a big fan of purple, but not a big fan of purple in set 1, don't worry. The film cards are coming out in January, and they are going to give you a huge boost in power. But for now, we have this. So, in case you've never seen a Kaido deck before, it centers around the purple Kaido leader. He's generically the best purple leader we have. The other one we have is King, and while yes, he looks really cool, his effect is kind of counterintuitive to how you want to play purple, so Kaido is kind of the one you got to start off with. Don -7, activate main once per turn, trash the top card of your opponent's life, is very strong. It's pretty much the killing blow that guarantees you game 90% of the time. And the whole point of purple is to utilize these powerful Don- effects alongside your rep effects like Onigashima, as well as the brand new ulti, to throughout a game just create more and more value against your opponent. Also, one card that I do think is a really awesome addition to the purple arsenal, no matter what, is the brand new 2-drop in Thunder, Bagua. This is a really powerful counter card, which if you use in the early turns of the game, can really ramp you and give you even more powerful cards faster. But yeah, from there's not really much else to talk about when it comes to purple, because the deck is kind of simple. You ramp, you play powerful cards like Kaido or even King, and you hope they themselves will take over the board and win you the game from there, and then everything else about the deck is all about not dying or gaining more Dawn. And even though I am less than hopeful when it comes to purple's performance in the set 1 meta, I know what this deck is capable of, and I have a very bright future in mind for this type of playstyle, so I cannot wait to get some early games in and test this deck throughout this format in preparation for the next one. But speaking of decks that I love and decks that I'm going to grind to get better with, I have the final deck for y'all in this video, Red Green Law. Brief little spiel about 2-color characters in One Piece. Because every 2-color character has 4 life instead of 5 life, you have to have a pretty powerful effect in order to justify that opportunity cost. Because in a format where decks like Zoro exist, having 4 life is really noticeable sometimes. And the only 2-color leader in set 1 that I think justifies the 4 life cost is Law. This is the closest thing you're going to get to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Combo deck in One Piece. Law's leader effect states, activate main once per turn by paying 2 Dawn. If you have 5 characters, return one of your characters to the owner's hand, then play up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less of a different color as the return character from your hand. So, if you have the maximum amount of characters, 5 in play, you can bounce one to your hand and then play one from your hand if it's a different color and is 5 cost or less. In theory, you can take a 1 cost Bonnie and swap it for a 5-drop Luffy for a cost of 2. That is an insane effect. And the fact that you have to be at the maximum number of characters sort of illustrates the power or like the scaling of that type of effect. That's the effect we're building this deck around. It's very open-ended, it has a ton of possibilities, and I would not be surprised that if 8 Law decks entered a tournament, every single deck would be different in some meaningful way. This version of Law that I have for you, I think, is best described as an aggressive version of Law. Because Law is both in red and green, it has access to a lot of powerful, cheap aggro cards, while also some really powerful control pieces. I would say the biggest culprits in this deck of being truly crazy are 1-drop Nami, 1-drop Bonnie, Izo, basically being able to rest 4 cost or less cards on play, and my personal favorite card in this deck, 5-drop Law SR. This card to me is a staple in every single green deck, but in this deck in particular, it really shines. Being a 5-cost, 6,000 blocker with the on-play ability, you may return one of your characters to your hand, play 1 character with a cost of 3 or less from your hand, really gives you an idea of the crazy amounts of combos you can do using Law. It's totally possible to have like a 5,000 Rush Zoro in play, you swing with it, you play this, and then you bounce it, play it again, and then swing because there is no restriction from 5-drop Law as to what card you play from your hand, so you can bounce one, then play the same one back. Really cool. From there, we also have really powerful other on-play effects. I mentioned Izo for resting your opponent's cards. There's also Cat Viper in here, who in my opinion is another staple for every single green deck. But then we also have the other 5-drop Law from the starter deck, which lets you reactivate other characters you have in play. So if you wanted to, you could attack with these 6,000 Law blockers and then reactivate them later so they can block during your opponent's turn. This aggro version of Law, in my opinion, is a way more aggressive deck than something like Red Zoro, because all of the real aggressive plays come from out of nowhere, and there's like this snowball effect, which if you reach it quick enough can just overwhelm your opponent. And as I alluded to earlier, there are tons of ways to approach building a Law deck. You don't have to go this route of just pure aggro, pure gas all the time. You can play things like a Wano Country engine using Momonosuke, as well as an 8-drop Kid engine in combination with Okiko to have a really powerful control-oriented game plan that you use all the powerful red on plays for to help you facilitate your Law's main effect. There's also versions that play cards like You Can Be My Samurai, which utilize your big board to gain even more advantage and maybe even make it easier for you to play cards in the late game. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Law. This deck is so cool. It's my personal favorite so far to test in One Piece, and I want to play it at the beginning of the format, at the end of the format, and I want to constantly be adding cards to it, tweaking it, and figuring out new fun things I can do with this leader. If Law is a deck you have your eye on as well, I definitely recommend starting with this list, but then constantly changing it and figuring out your preferred way to play Law. Like I said, with a leader like this, the possibilities are endless. And boom, there you guys go. That does it for all my first draft deck lists in the One Piece card game for the Set 1 Romance Dawn format. Hopefully I gave y'all a really good starting off point so you can begin your very own deck building journey in One Piece. Thank y'all so much for watching. As always, I've been your true champion, Steven. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Peace.